Good afternoon. My name is Jim Conlan, and welcome to the latest episode of our entertainment show. As you know, as part of our entertainment show, we look at upcoming sort of features called cult classic movies. These are pioneering movies that have lasted the dawns of time, whether it's the 70s, whether it's the 80s, the 90s, the noughties, and even to the past decade or so. These are movies that have been watched by generations upon generations, that have been global box office hits, that have been up for Academy Awards, Oscars contention as such, and are still being viewed by millions of people all over the world in all different countries and different continents. That are being dubbed in all sorts of different languages as well. And each week we try and take a different movie from a different sort of genre, whether it's action, whether it's romance, whether it's thriller, whether it's suspense. And obviously this movie we're going to feature this week is an action. It's also a bit of a thriller, but it's also got that element of suspense in it as well. The movie is called US Marshals. 1998 was the release date of that movie. In terms of its global appeal, over 102 million it grossed worldwide in terms of box office. Both Tommy Lee Jones and Wesley Snipes were up for award in terms of the best duo on set. And obviously, some of the stars of the shows, Tommy Lee Jones played Samuel Gerard, Wesley Snipes played Sheridan, Robert Downey Jr. played the federal agent Rice, Joe Patalano played Renfro, Tom Wood played Newman, and I'm not leaving this guy to last, but we're just getting down the list. And the one and only Daniel Roebuck, my guest this evening, played the character Biggs. He was one of those agents, one of those US Marshals, belonged to Tommy Lee Jones. And dare I say it, Daniel, you've been in some blockbuster movies throughout your career, especially in the 90s, some smash hits. By the grace of God, when you signed up for US Marshals and when you saw the cast, did you say to yourself, I'm on for another good one now in terms of this is Harrison Ford all over again?
Well, it's a very good question. Thank you for having me on your show, Jim. So we did The Fugitive, as you know, the US Marshals is the sequel, I guess, to The Fugitive. And we had a great time on The Fugitive, but no one on the movie knew that it was going to be the hit that it was. I mean, I remember even one day Harrison said, this is going to be, he referenced a movie that had been a flop, My Hudson Hawk, I think he said. It's a while ago. But you know, they had said, well, there might be a sequel, and then my gosh, there was a sequel, and we were thrilled. I mean, that was pretty great when that came along. So it was nice, and Wesley Snipes, certainly a respected actor and a respected genre personality. Robert Downey Jr., a little piece of information, I think Bill Paxton was maybe up for that part too for Rice, but then it ended up Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, Samuel L. Jackson was up for the Wesley Snipes role before Wesley Snipes got the for Wesley.
That's so
Snipes
interesting, and LaTanya Richardson, Sam's wife, ended up playing the other, the fourth Marshall. Yeah, because L. Scotty Caldwell was doing a play on Broadway, so she was unavailable. So LaTanya was brought in, and she's terrific. So we were lucky to have her, believe me.
And in terms of Tommy Lee Jones obviously coming in and sort of fronting the movie, and you mentioned The Fugitive and a sort of sequel towards that with sort of Harrison sort of Ford as well. But they were looking for someone with sort of similar traits to Harrison Ford, do you think, when Tommy Lee Jones was sort of cast? Because he does give off that sort of a vibe of sort of a real sort of, dare I say, cop detective mentality. He really sort of fits into that sort of role. You could always imagine him being real life, being a US Marshal, dare I say.
Well, so in terms of, they were smart enough to not make the next story, like The Fugitive was about an innocent man, wrongly convicted, escaped, pursued. It was Les Miserables, it was, The Fugitive, it was the 1974 Planet of the Apes, it was all those movies and shows and books and whatnot. So they were smart enough to say, well, let's make it a thriller more than an action film. And of course, Wesley Snipes was a perfect
Yeah.
choice for that. Um, and he could play. It's interesting to me, to me, of the two movies, The Fugitive maybe has a little more heartstring to me because it was the first and it was such a unique time to have met all those people and to have created that. And Andy Davis was such a great director. And they brought in Stuart Baird, who was a great director, a great editor. Stuart Baird, the director, had edited The Omen and Superman and all the great 70s movies that we liked. And now he's doing these marvelous sequences in the James Bond movies. But it was a different kind of director and it was a different kind of film. And I think that was really smart to do that. But then the Marshals, had to fit into the thriller film, and we had to have the same kind of relationships that we had in the action film, which are two different genres. So it was interesting when we got the first scripts they had written. I mean, the truth is, with all respect to Jeb Stewart and everyone who contributed to the script of The Fugitive, much of that movie was improvised within the context of the dialogue of Gerard and the Marshals. All the things that people love were improvised, except Deb put that term that I say, this is hinky. Why would he come in here? So everybody in America says, this is hinky. And they think of that scene. What does that mean? When Tommy Lee Jones is yelling at me. What does that mean? Hinky. Strange, weird. So we ad-libbed so much of the first movie, and then we'd ad-lib it, then we'd memorialize it. Someone would type it down, then we'd shoot it. And in the second movie, they tried to write all those ad-libs, and they weren't ad-libs then. So at some point, thank God, Tommy Lee Jones said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do it the same way we did the first time. We're going to get there and we're going to make it up. And that was my Tommy Lee Jones. They called me Roebuck.
And Daniel, I suppose an awful lot is written now about the US Marshals, and some of the content, obviously, we're not going to go into it, but some of the content, it was probably, as you people well know and documented, it was a rough patch in the life of Robert Downey Jr. back then, in terms of off the set sort of troubles, and we're not going to really go into that
it's certainly not our business. We're talking about the movie. I will say, I will say, if you would have said, here's a picture of the cast of US Marshals, one of these people is going to be in jail and the other one is going to be the biggest movie star in the world, I would have think that in 1998, most people would have got it wrong as to who was going to be who. Look, God bless Robert Downey Jr. because there are so many who struggle without the grace of God. And I don't know what it was that brought him back, but what would we do without that guy? Single-handedly, if Iron Man would have failed, there'd be no other Marvel movies. If it wasn't for him. I watched, the other day, I watched Chaplin. Ever seen that? Richard Attenborough's Chaplin, about Charlie Chaplin.
It's ringing a bell, but it's not coming to vividly into my head at the moment. It's probably something I have to go back and sort of watch in terms of memory.
I would say if you're doing 90s movies, it's a completely different genre. And respectfully to Richard Attenborough, who is, no doubt a genius, Chaplin's not his best movie. Chaplin's not Gandhi, but Robert Downey Jr. is so good as Chaplin. It's like you watch and you're like, oh God, there's nothing this kid can't do. And I remember him. You have to imagine we may not have known each other, but we had been sitting next to each other in auditions from 1984 on. Once River's Edge came out, well, that was 86, let's say. From 1986, I'd audition for Less Than Zero. I'd audition for whatever. We'd always be in the same room.
Yeah.
I always liked him. He's always got a smile on his face. But yeah, look, I think it's great that he's in the movie. Bill Paxton's a great actor too, but Robert Downey Jr. has, that was nice that he was the bad guy, spoiler alert. But it was nice that he got to play something different.
And I suppose in terms of the locations and the shooting for the movie, it's mainly filmed in New York and sort of Chicago. And in terms of its production, was it at the time back, obviously a big production, 1998, was it 6-month shoot from start to finish?
Yeah, it was a long shoot. So just historically, if I could put into perspective, The Fugitive was probably almost a similar shoot, 4.5 months, 5 months. But because The Fugitive was conceptualized to be shot in a chronological order, and I don't mean scene by scene, I mean section by section, because Harrison Ford's beard and hair had to be drastically different throughout the movie. And then there was I was shooting Matlock, and we were set to go, and I was finishing on Matlock, and then there was a tragedy. The actor who was playing the bad guy got very ill, so they had to replace him. He eventually passed away. And then Jeroen Krabbe came in, and then they ended up having to go back and reshoot the beginning of the movie, which they were trying desperately not to do. So everybody had to wear fake beards and stuff. Well, not everyone, but Harrison did. The US Marshals was, I think it was about 5.5 months. Different kind of deal. We would go, because the movie is so vast and there'd be weeks of shooting that the Marshals weren't in, we would be called to work to, they'd say, you got to be here in 2 weeks. And then we would just come back and be there. We needed to be there. I remember one night.
You can say what you're saying there. Were you able to just take on other projects at the time, or
No,
were you just solely focused on that?
Yeah, I don't. You would have been me.
Yeah,
you would have been asking for trouble. You tried to double dip.
Yeah,
and one of the reasons was, pardon me, Robert would throw a grenade into the schedule, and then they'd be like, well, you got to come now. I remember one time I went and I had befriended the great family, Phil and his family, who owned the cemetery. And I came into town to shoot whatever on a Tuesday, Monday night, we'd go out to dinner. And Phil goes, you're not shooting tomorrow. And I said, what are you talking about? He goes, you're not shooting tomorrow. I go, yeah, I am. He goes, no, they can't find somebody. And he knew it because it was his location.
Yeah.
So he was right. And I got back on a plane and went back home. So you never knew. But again, I think it's very important to say, this is a good man and it's a good person, and God bless him that he got everything together, because he's given us so many great performances since 1997. I don't know what the heck we would have done without him. So the other thing about, if I could say, we got like Tom Wood again and Joe Pantoliano again, and LaTanya replacing the character. I mean, it was great to have the band back together again, especially with Tommy Lee, because Mr. Jones is quite a talent, and anytime you could stand, if you're smart like me, and I think I am smart enough to shut up, pay attention, watch, learn, and Tommy Lee Jones is like, he's like a master class in acting, and all you got to do is stand next to him and be like, he's my friend.
Yeah, very much so, Daniel. And Daniel, in terms of the stunts, and obviously we have to look at US Marshals, and obviously a good lot of the stunts revolved around Wesley Snipes in terms of his stunts. And did you at times get to see those sort of stunts and the stunt teams in action? And did everyone sort of have a stunt sort of double? And did Wesley have a stunt double for most of those scenes, or did he take on a good lot of them himself?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, imagine like when he's swinging on the thing, that there's only so much you can ask. Wesley may have done some of it. I don't remember the sequence. So many of those big sequences, like we wouldn't have been there because our characters although we were present in the what was that, a hospital or something, we were already dispersed and not on the roof. Pardon me. So,
Yeah.
You know, I'm just thinking back. I know we're talking about US Marshals. I want to say about the Fugitive. When they were going to crash the train, and they really crashed the train, they woke us up at 2 o'clock in the morning. We all put our clothes on, were shuttled in vans and driven because you could stand above the train to watch the crash. And then they didn't crash the train for whatever reason. So we all went home. And then the next night they said we're crashing the train. And every one of us was like, I'll see it in the movie. Well, I've never made that mistake again. Like, I'm there when they do the big stunts if they invite me. But I may not have been even in Chicago for that sequence.
Okay. And I suppose, Daniel, in terms of the reception and obviously the premiere, I mean, you got to, obviously, probably as a cast, you probably got to see the taping before everyone else, before it was released as probably a private sort of showing. What was your sort of reaction when you saw it from start to finish? Were you sort of surprised by the quality and the content of it?
No, I thought we had a hit. I really did. They premiered it in Westwood, and we were all in very high spirits because we thought that's a great movie. Look, Stuart Baird's great. I mean, he's a great director. He had movie stars, everything about it suggested a hit like The Fugitive. I don't remember what we were up against when it came out, but it didn't perform as well as The Fugitive. But I mean, the real proof in the pudding is it plays constantly on TV here, and I'm assuming it plays constantly on TV there. And people love it. And when people stop me, and believe me, people stop me a lot, they say that they love US Marshals. And I'll say, more than The Fugitive? And they say, yeah, it's a better movie. So, obviously, like you, Jim, there's people who have who like a thriller more than they like it just a plain old action movie. I want to tell your audience they can look for 2 other cameos in the movie. When we're in the bar after the first sequence, my father's in that scene, and so is my brother. And if you look, you could see, because they both look like me. And at one point, the AD said, "You sit down, you sit down, you sit down, you sit down." And my dad has been around sets long enough to know to never do what the AD tells him, but to do the opposite if you want to be on camera. So Tommy Lee Jones, there's a whole scene where Tommy Lee Jones is toasting the kid with milk or something, and my dad's right over his shoulder, like watching. So the next time you see, you can be like, "There's Dan's dad."
No problem in the world. And Daniel, in terms of the character Biggs, and obviously Biggs appeared in the Fugitive as well, was it very much the same, or obviously the Fugitive appeared back in 1993 or 92, 93, but obviously US Marshals appeared in 1998. Did you want to give a different sort of vibe, sort of freshen him up?
No, and it was, and in fact, these are the things. This is where people make mistakes. So we had a sequel to The Fugitive. Let's give them the same characters in a different situation. So I think the only thing that changed was we were trying to be a little funnier because it was a thriller. Like in The Fugitive, because it was an action movie, what was funny was our relationships. And a line like, "Why don't you think me up a chocolate donut with some sprinkles?" Completely made up by Tommy Lee Jones, but gets a huge laugh. In US Marshals, we had a little more leeway because now we were able to think about the gags before we got to the set. And I think more, that's not an insult. I think I was a bit more experienced a writer and comedian than Joey or Tom or LaTanya. So, I mean, I would come in with, I go, "I'll use this one, Joey. You say those skies sure weren't friendly last night." Like, I started divvying up my jokes so that everybody would have something funny to say. in a sequence. But there's all that stuff about, is the food free? Or like, that was all purposely put in there to give the audience a chance to go, oh, these guys are crazy. We just love these marshals. We would have loved, of course, a third movie. Wouldn't that have been nice? But can't be greedy.
And who knows, it may still happen yet, Daniel. And Daniel, I know you're very much still involved in the entertainment industry in terms of movies, in terms of TV shows. And I do believe you have a role coming up in the Munsters, a new release started coming out this way, and you're busy in terms of producing and directing sort of shows. Maybe you're enlightening our audience what's in store for Daniel Roebuck in terms of the remainder of 2022.
Is it? Are we on video or only on voice? It's a dumb question. I didn't know.
Both.
Oh,
really.
So people could see if I pull up my Grandpa Munster doll. So I am playing the Count in the Count, ostensibly Grandpa Munster, in a new version of the Munsters that was written and directed and is being directed by Rob Zombie. I've been in a number of his movies. And I'm so blessed and honored to be trusted with this part. The fact is, I've been a Universal Monsters fan since I was a little boy. I'm pulling up a picture here, see if I could show you. I've always been a fan of monsters, and in fact, when I was a child, I was a vampire clown in a circus. I think your audience could see that. Isn't that crazy?
I can see it, yeah.
So imagine then when I get to be Grandpa Munster nearly 50 years later.
Like father and son.
Like father and son, like grandfather and son. So God is good, and that worked out. And then if your audience wants to go to achannelofpeace.org, achannelofpeace.org. That's an old hymn, make me a channel of your peace. So achannelofpeace.org, they'll see the movies that we've been making, these kind of faith-based family movies. And I say faith-based, but they have an element of a higher power and some relationship, but they're not, if you say I'm making a faith-based, people go, oh, God. They're not like Jesus, I don't bludgeon you with Jesus or Allah or anybody. I bludgeon you with a good story, lots of laughs, good comedy, good mystery, and then there's an element of faith. So they can see it if they go to A Channel of Peace. First movie I made was Getting Grace. We didn't make it under that banner, but I think they could find that in the United Kingdom. I think it's playing somewhere. Getting Grace. And then the second one I made, Lucky Louie, we'll have out this year, that I wrote and directed with my daughter. And the third one is The Hail Mary, which will be out next year. The Hail Mary is fun. It's about a nun who finds a guy who needs redemption. So to lead him to it, he's intuitive enough to know he's going to need her help. She cons him into creating a football team for her all-boys Catholic school. Very, very sweet movie. Very fun movie. Anyway, so that's I've been very blessed, very busy. I'm in Jedi Fallen Order. I don't know if you play video games, but I'm one of the main guys. Look, I'm a 59-year-old man, and I'm, there was.
You're a Trekkie.
I'm a Trekkie. I've been in Star Trek. I've been in Star Wars. I've been in the Munsters. That's a pretty good. That's 3 out of the park for a schnoot like me from Pennsylvania.
And I suppose, Daniel Roebuck, the penultimate question before I let you go. In terms of your acting career, it's brought you all across the world. You've worked with some of the biggest names in the industries. Have you ever got to shot something or shoot something in Ireland, or have you ever been here recreationally on holidays or stuff like that? And what's your experience of, if you have, what's your experience with Irish culture and Irish people? Or have you worked with any famous Irish actors or actresses?
Jim, the answer to all that is I have not. I have not. So I wish I had a gauntlet. What can I throw down? I'll throw down this old videotape of dudes. I'm throwing it down. Listen, I want to come to Ireland. I want to work with great Irish actors. I want to see the beautiful countryside. And the joke actors have is, so this is to all you guys who make movies in Ireland, I can't hire you. So you have to hire me. So you gotta bring me to Ireland and let me see it. The closest I got, we shot Agent Cody Banks 2, It's Lost in London, whatever, in London in England. I know I'm smart enough. I'm not a stupid American. I know it's a different country. But I would love to come see your beautiful country. So I hope God provides me with an opportunity to do so, honestly.
And the final question for you, Daniel Roebuck. You appeared in the cult classic movie, this week's feature for US Marshals, which aired in 1998 alongside, as we said, Tommy Lee Jones, Wesley Snipes, Robert Downey Jr., Joe Pantoliano, Tom Wood. But if they did, let's say, a US Marshals encyclopedia, a sort of dictionary as such, and they put your character Biggs into it, and they left 2 blank sentences underneath it in terms of each description. Not really an epitaph, but a description of the sort of character. And they asked you to write those 2 sentences for that encyclopedia to sum up Biggs. What would you like those 2 sentences to read?
My God, that's maybe the most interesting question. I've been interviewed since I was 10 years old. No one has ever asked me a question that interesting or full or great. I think the 2 sentences, one would be, they gave Joe Pantoliano all of his lines in the first movie, and he stole them back in the second.
Okay. That is perfect. That is perfect. Daniel Roebuck, an absolute pleasure talking to you today to relive US Marshals. Thanks for giving your insight in terms of The Fugitive as well. We wish you all the best in your independent movies, the faith type of movies, and obviously the Munsters as well. And do get to our shores in Ireland in the near future. And if you're not shooting a movie or film here, do check out the landscape. I'm sure it's something you love to enjoy, all the scenic attractions, and we look forward to seeing you in the near future. Daniel Roebuck, take care. God bless.
God bless you, Jim, and all your listeners and watchers. I'll see you at the movies.
See you at the movies. Take care, Daniel.